Happy holidays. Happy holidays. Hey, welcome back everyone for another edition of the 12 Days of Christmas with your host, Gerry E. Potter, as usual. And we're going to take another look at another Christmas short story here today to help you celebrate the Christmas holiday. I hope you're all having a blessed and wonderful holiday season. Um, I did have, as they say in radio, sometimes you have to pay the bills. Well, we had a sponsored announcement from Humor Consultants. I was required to tell a couple of jokes um, to compensate for the work that we do with the humor consultants, Phil and Susan Sorrentino. So a couple of humor consultant jokes. I hope these work well. So let's try this one. What did the snowman and his wife put over their baby's crib? A snowmobile. A snowmobile. Yes. So what do you call an old snowman? Water. All right. I guess that's probably enough of that. Okay, now one more. Just one more. How do you find Will Smith in the snow? You search for fresh prints. Yeah, well, I know I do understand if you take offense to those, and I hope that it's nothing that lasts too long uh, and doesn't affect your sensibility too bad as we move forward. So, today's story: how the good gifts were used by two. It's a Christmas short story, again called "How the Good Gifts Were Used by Two," meaning two different folks. A short Christmas story by Howard Pyle. So let's get started on today's story. This is the way the story begins. Once upon a time there was a rich brother and a poor brother, and the one lived across the street from the other. The rich brother had all the world's gear that was good for him, and more besides. As for the poor brother, why, he had hardly enough to keep soul and body together. Yet he was contented with his lot, and contentment did not sit back of the stove in the rich brother's house. Wherefore, in this the rich brother had less than the poor brother. Now these things happened in good old times when the saints used to be going hither and thither in the world upon this business and upon that. So one day, who should come traveling to the town where the rich brother and the poor brother lived, but himself, St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas himself. Just beside the town gate stood the great house of the rich brother. Thither went the saint and knocked at the door, and it was the rich brother himself who came and opened it to him. Now St. Nicholas had had a long walk of it that day, so that he was quite covered with dust, and he looked no better than he should. Therefore he seemed to be only a common beggar, and when the rich brother heard him ask for a night's lodging at his fine great house, he gasped like a toad in a rainstorm. What? Did the traveler think that he kept a free lodging home for beggars? If he did, he was bringing his grist to the wrong mill. There was no place for the likes of him in this house, and that was the truth. But yonder was a poor man's house across the street. If we went over there, if he did, perhaps he could get a night's lodging and a crust of bread. That was what the rich brother said, and after he had said it, he banged to the door and left St. Nicholas standing on the outside under the blessed sky. So now there was nothing for good St. Nicholas to do but to go across the street to the poor brother's house, as the other had told him to do so. Rap, tap, tap, he knocked at the door, and it was the poor brother who came and opened it for him. Come in, says he. Come in and welcome. So in came St. Nicholas and sat himself down behind the stove where it was good and warm, while the poor man's wife spread before him all that they had in the house, a loaf of bread and a crock of cold water from the town fountain. "And as that all that you have to eat?" said St. Nicholas. Yes, that was all that they had. "Then maybe I can help you to better," said St. Nicholas. "So bring me hither a bowl and a crock." You may guess that the poor man's wife was not too long fetching what he'd wanted. When they were brought, the saint blessed the one and passed his hand over the other. Then he said, "Bowl, be filled." And straightway the bowl began to boil up with a good rich meat pottage until it was full to the brim. Then the saint said, "Bowl, be stilled," and it stopped making the broth, and there stood as good a feast as any man could wish for. Then St. Nicholas said, "Crock, be filled," and the crock began to bubble up with the best of beer. Then he said, "Crock, be stilled," and there stood as good drink as man ever poured down his throat. Down they all sat, the saint and the poor man and the poor man's wife, and drank till they could eat, and eat till they could drink no more. And whenever the bowl and the crock grew empty, the one and the other became filled at the bidding. The next morning the saint trudged off the way he was going, but he left behind him the bowl and the crock, so there was no danger of hunger and thirst ever coming to that house. Well, the world jogged along for a while, maybe a month or two, and life was as easy for the poor man and his wife as an old shoe. One day, the rich brother said to his wife, now, luck seems to be stroking our brother over yonder the right way. I'll just go and see what it all means." So over the street he went, and found the poor man at home. Down he sat back of the stove and began to chatter and talk and chatter, and the upshot of the matter was that bit by bit he dragged out the whole story from the poor man. He dragged out the entire story. Then nothing would do, but he must see the bowl and the crock at work. So the bowl and the crock were brought and set to work, and whew! How the rich man opened his eyes when he saw that they were making good broth and beer of themselves. And now he must and would have that bowl and that crock. At first the poor brother said no, but the other bargained and bargained until at least the poor man consented to let him have the two of them for $100. So the rich brother, he paid his poor brother and then went on about his business. $100 he receives. When the next day had come, the rich brother said to his wife, "Never you mind about the dinner today. You go into the harvest field and I will see to dinner." So off his wife went with the harvesters, and the husband stayed at home and smoked his pipe all the morning, for he knew that dinner would be ready at his bidding. So when noontime had come, he took out the bowl and the crock and placed them on the table and said, "Bowl, be filled. Crock, be filled." Straightway they began making broth and beer as fast as they could. Well, in a little while, the bowl and the crock were filled, and then they could hold no more, so that the broth and the beer ran down over the table and onto the floor. Then the rich brother was in a pretty pickle, for he did not know how to bid the bowl and the crock to stop from making what they were making. Out he ran and across the street to the poor man's house. And meanwhile, the broth and the beer filled the whole room until it could hold no more, and then ran out into the gutters, so that all the pigs and the dogs in the town had a feast on that day. "Oh, dear brother," cried rich man to the poor man, "do not let me. Do tell me, what to do, or the whole town is going to be smothered in broth and beer. But no, the poor brother was not to be stirred in such haste. They would have to strike a bit of a bargain first. So the upshot of the matter was that the rich brother had to pay the poor brother another $100 to take the crock and the bowl back again. See now what comes of being covetous? Well, as for the poor man, he was well off in the world, for he had all that he could eat and drink, and a stocking of money back of the stove besides. Well, time went along, as time does, and now it was St. Christopher who was thinking about taking a little journey below. See, brother, says St. Nicholas to him, if you chance to be jogging by yonder town, stop at the poor man's house, for there you will have a warm and welcome and plenty to eat. But when St. Christopher came to the town, the rich man's house seemed so much larger and finer than the poor man's house that he thought that he would ask for lodging there. Well, it fared the same with him that it had with St. Nicholas. Prut! Did he think that the rich man kept free lodgings for beggars? And bang! The door was slammed in his face the same, and off packed the saint with a flea in his ear. Over he went to the poor man's house, and there was a warm welcome for him, and good broth and beer from the bowl, and the crock that St. Nicholas had blessed. After he had supped all he could, he went to bed, where he slept as snug and warm as a mouse in the nest. Well, that's our short story for today's 12 Days of Christmas. I am Gerry E. Potter. Hope you enjoyed how the good gifts were used by a short Christmas story by Howard Pyle. And we hope that you will join us. We have a couple more sessions coming up here before Christmas, just as a way to try to offer a little more value, history, and some love towards your Christmas this year. If you like what you saw, give us a comment, a like, a heart, something. Hit the bell so you'll know when we do something else. Again, if you find someone that needs a blessing, allow God to be that blessing for that person. If you know someone that may be having a hard time during this pandemic season in 2020 that we're all dealing with, make sure you give them a call, send them a note. They could probably use a big hug, and if they need more, again, maybe you can be that channel that God can use as a way to bless someone close to you the way He's blessed you. So thanks again. Gerry E. Potter here with the ATS Business University. You can plant better. You can dominate. Come dominate with us this Christmas season and into a new year. God bless you. We love you bunches. Merry Christmas all. Merry Christmas.